Sign it or walk away with nothing. Dad would have wanted this. That's what my brother said to me, sliding a document across the table 2 hours after we buried our father. And in that moment, standing in the house I grew up in, still wearing my funeral suit, I made a decision that changed everything. My name is Ethan. And this is the story of how I lost my family in a single afternoon and made sure they lost a whole lot more. My father worked for 30 years building a small but honest commercial real estate consulting firm. Nothing flashy. Just a man who believed a handshake meant something and that your word was your bond. He raised my brother and me with the same values. Or at least he tried. My brother, who is 6 years older than me, had a different interpretation of those lessons. He saw the firm as a ladder. My father, I think, saw it as a legacy. When my father got sick, stage 3 pancreatic cancer, diagnosed on a Tuesday in March, my brother moved fast. He started showing up to every doctor's appointment. He started handling the paperwork, the insurance calls, the pharmacy runs. My wife, Maya, and I lived 40 minutes away. I had a newborn daughter at home. We came every weekend, but I won't pretend I was there every day. I trusted my brother. That was my first mistake. My father passed on a Thursday morning in October. I was holding his hand. My brother was in the hallway on his phone, though he told everyone he was too overcome to be in the room. At the burial, he stood at the front and cried loudly enough that the pastor put a hand on his shoulder. My mother stood between us, small and quiet, the way she always was when she didn't know which side to be on. Maya held our daughter through the whole service. Our little girl was 4 months old. She slept through most of it, bundled in a white fleece, completely unaware that the world was smaller now. After the burial, we went back to my parents' house. There was food on every surface, casseroles and pies from neighbors, a ham from the church ladies. People I hadn't seen in years kept touching my arm and saying my father was a good man. He was. He was the best man I knew. About an hour in, my brother asked me to come to the study. Just the two of us. He was already sitting behind my father's desk when I walked in. That detail hit me wrong immediately. He'd never sat in that chair, not in all the years we grew up. It was our father's chair. I stood in the doorway for a second, just looking at him, trying to read his face. He looked calm. Too calm for a man who just lost his dad. "Close the door," he said. I did. He pushed a manila folder across the desk. Dad updated his will in August. I had it notarized and everything. The firm goes to me. The house goes to Mom. You get the savings account, there's about $40,000 in it. I sat down slowly. I picked up the folder. The document inside looked official. My father's signature was at the bottom, next to a notary stamp. I read through it once, then again. "This doesn't sound like Dad," I said. "He told me we were splitting the firm 50-50. He told me that directly." My brother shrugged. "He changed his mind. You weren't around enough. He needed someone he could count on." There it was. Said out loud, like it was nothing. "I was home with a newborn," I said quietly. "Maya had a difficult delivery. Dad understood that. Dad made a business decision," my brother said. "Sign the acknowledgement form and we move on. Or don't sign it and we go through probate, which will cost both of us time and money and drag this out for months." He slid a second form across the desk. A pen on top of it. He was watching me with this expression I can only describe as impatience. Like he'd already run the calculation and was just waiting for me to catch up. I picked up the pen. I looked at the signature line. And something in my chest went cold and quiet, not grief, not rage. Something steadier than either of those things. I put the pen down. "I need to have my attorney review this first," I said. His jaw tightened. "Don't make this complicated." "I'm not," I said. "I'm being careful. There's a difference." I stood up, took the folder, and walked out of the study. He called after me once. I kept walking. Maya was in the kitchen, bouncing our daughter on her hip, talking to one of my aunts. When she saw my face, she excused herself and followed me out to the backyard. I handed her the folder without a word. She read it standing up, one hand still resting on our daughter's back. She looked up at me. "Ethan, this notary stamp. What about it?" "I've processed enough legal documents at work to know what a county notary stamp looks like. This one has the wrong seal format for this state. And the date, August 14th, your dad was in the hospital that week. He had a procedure on the 12th. He wasn't signing anything on the 14th. I stared at her. "You're sure? Call the notary's office first thing Monday," she said. "And don't sign anything." Maya worked as a senior paralegal at a civil litigation firm. She had for 7 years. I want to be clear about this because some people might wonder why she wasn't at every family gathering or why my brother didn't know her well. She worked long hours and we'd only been at my parents' house together a handful of times. My brother had made comments over the years, subtle ones about how she was career-focused in a way that wasn't meant as a compliment. She'd never said anything back. She was gracious like that, but she was also the sharpest person in any room she walked into. That night, driving home, our daughter asleep in her car seat, Maya and I didn't talk much. The silence between us wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of quiet that meant we were both thinking hard. "He's been planning this for a while," I finally said. "Probably since your dad got the diagnosis," she said. "He had 8 months. I gripped the steering wheel. "My dad would never have cut me out. Never." "I know," she said softly. "So, we find the real will." Monday morning, Maya called the notary listed on the document. The notary had no record of witnessing any signature from my father in August. None. Their seal had been copied lifted from another document, most likely, and the notary number was registered to a different county entirely. By Wednesday, Maya had contacted the probate court directly and put a hold on any will filing associated with my father's estate, citing potential document fraud. My brother didn't know yet. He was already calling the firm's clients, introducing himself as the new owner. Thursday, I went to my father's estate attorney. A woman my father had used for 20 years, someone who genuinely cared about him. She pulled up her records and confirmed. My father's actual will, the one he'd signed in her presence 2 years prior with proper witnesses, divided the firm equally between my brother and me, left the house to my mother with a life estate, and established a small college trust for any grandchildren. She looked at me across her desk and said, "This is forgery, Ethan. What your brother filed, if he files it, is a felony." I nodded slowly. "What do we do?" "We file the authentic will immediately," she said. "And then you decide how far you want to take it." I took it all the way. We filed the legitimate will that afternoon. We simultaneously submitted the forged document to the county district attorney's office with a full written report from Maya detailing the discrepancies, the false notary seal, the incorrect stamp format, the hospital records proving my father was medically incapacitated on the date of the supposed signature. My brother found out through the probate court notification. He called me 4 times in a row. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail on the 4th call. His voice was controlled, but I could hear something underneath it, the first trace of something I'd never heard from him before. Uncertainty. "Ethan, call me back. We can work this out like adults. Whatever Maya told you, she doesn't understand how estate law works. Call me." I played the voicemail for Maya. She raised an eyebrow. "He just accidentally admitted he knows I was involved." She was right. He'd never asked how I found out. He went straight to Maya. Because he knew she was the one person who could read what he'd done. I called him back that evening. One time. "I'm not calling to negotiate," I said when he picked up. "I'm calling to tell you that the DA's office has the document, the notary has confirmed they never met our father, and I have his medical records from August 14th showing he was on a morphine drip following a surgical procedure. The estate attorney filed the real will this morning. You have nothing." Silence on his end. Long enough that I thought the call had dropped. "You're destroying this family," he finally said. "No," I said. "You did that when you sat in Dad's chair 2 hours after we buried him and told me to sign away what he actually left me." I hung up. The next 2 weeks moved fast. The DA's office opened a formal investigation. My brother hired a defense attorney. My mother called me for the first time since the funeral, crying, saying she didn't know what was happening, that my brother had told her everything was settled, that she'd trusted him to handle it. I listened. I didn't say much. "Did you know about the document he presented me with?" I asked her. A pause. "He said it was paperwork. He said your father signed it. He was on a morphine drip, Mom. He couldn't have signed his own name that week." Another long pause. Then, quietly, he showed me something in July. He said Dad wanted to make changes. I didn't read it carefully. I should have. I closed my eyes. "Did you sign anything?" "Just a witness line," she whispered. He said it was routine. That was the moment things got heavier for me, not lighter. Because my mother wasn't a schemer. She was a woman who'd spent 40 years deferring to the men in her family and had done it one last time without understanding the weight of it. Her signature as a witness on a fraudulent document made her, at minimum, a person of interest. I didn't tell her that on the phone. I told her to get her own attorney, separate from my brother's. I told her not to sign anything else without one. She didn't understand why I was being so serious. I think she still believed it was going to smooth over the way family arguments usually do. It wasn't going to smooth over. 2 days later, I got a letter forwarded from my father's firm, or what my brother had already started rebranding as his firm. It was from 3 of my father's longest-standing clients. They'd heard there was a dispute over the estate. They were pausing their contracts until the ownership question was resolved. Those 3 clients represented roughly 40% of the firm's annual revenue. My brother emailed me that night. Subject line, "We need to meet." I showed it to Maya. She read it and shook her head slowly. "He's bleeding. Don't meet him without your attorney present." "I know," I said. "And don't meet him at all, if you can avoid it," she added. "There's nothing he can say to you in person that changes the evidence." I declined the meeting by email, copied my attorney. What my brother did next surprised me. He went to my mother and convinced her to write a letter to the estate court, claiming that she had been present when my father expressed his wish to leave the firm solely to my brother. Not a legal document, just a personal letter. Handwritten. My mother, who trusted him, who was grieving, who didn't have her own attorney yet despite my warning, wrote it and gave it to him. He filed it with the court as supporting testimony. When my attorney called to tell me, I sat very still for a moment. Then I asked, "Can we get her phone records? Texts between her and my brother around the time she wrote that letter?" "Possibly through discovery," my attorney said. "Pull everything," I said. Discovery is a remarkable thing. What came back over the following weeks was a thread of text messages between my brother and my mother that started in June, 4 months before my father died, 2 months into his diagnosis. In those messages, my brother laid out the plan in pieces. He told my mother that the firm would be better off with one clear owner. He told her that I was distracted with the baby. He told her that Dad had already expressed this sentiment to him privately. He told her not to mention any of it to me because it would cause unnecessary conflict when Dad needed peace. My mother's responses were mostly short. "Okay. I understand. Whatever you think is best." She wasn't a mastermind. She was a grieving wife who'd handed her trust to the wrong son. But her messages made clear she'd known something was being arranged, and she'd said nothing to me. I spent a night sitting with that. Just me, in our kitchen. After Maya and our daughter had gone to sleep, I thought about my father, about how he'd built something real and honest and then died believing his family would carry it forward the same way. About the look on his face the last few weeks when he was lucid, the way he'd squeeze my hand and say, "You'll be all right, you too." Meaning Maya and me. Meaning he knew we'd be okay together. He didn't know what his older son had been building in the background. I wasn't angry at my mother in the way I was angry at my brother. But I also wasn't able to protect her from what she'd chosen, even passively, to participate in. The DA's office sent her a formal notice. She called me 3 times in 1 hour that morning. I answered the 3rd call. "Ethan, what is this? They want my phone?" She sounded genuinely frightened. "They want your text messages," I said. "Specifically the ones between you and my brother from June through October." Silence. "Mom," I said, "I told you to get your own attorney." "Did you?" "No, I thought your brother said." "Stop," I said gently. "Don't tell me what he said. Call an attorney today. Don't talk to investigators without one. And don't talk to my brother about any of this anymore." "Are you going to let them take my house?" she asked. Her voice broke on the last word. I pressed my hand against my eyes. "The house is protected under the real will, Mom. Your life estate is intact. No one is taking your house. But you need representation." She didn't say anything for a moment. Then, "I'm sorry, Ethan. I should have called you in June." "Yeah," I said. "You should have." I hung up slowly. Maya was standing in the doorway, our daughter asleep against her shoulder. She'd heard enough. She didn't say anything. She just walked over and leaned her head against mine for a moment. That was enough. My brother's defense attorney made a motion to have the forgery charges reduced, arguing intent was unclear and the document was never actually filed with the court before the hold was placed. The DA pushed back hard, citing the copied notary seal and the medical records. The judge denied the motion. Meanwhile, the legitimate will moved through probate and was certified. The firm was officially split 50-50 per my father's actual wishes. My brother was still technically a co-owner, but with a pending felony charge and 3 major clients suspended, the firm's value had dropped significantly. Several employees had quietly started looking for other positions, not wanting to be connected to the scandal. One of my father's oldest employees, a woman who'd been with the firm for 15 years, called me to say she'd always known my father intended to leave things equally. She offered to provide a written statement if it would help. I thanked her and forwarded her contact to my attorney. My brother called one more time. About 6 weeks after the funeral. He didn't leave a voicemail this time. Just called and hung up when I didn't answer. I sat there looking at the missed call notification, and I felt something I didn't expect. Not satisfaction exactly, but a kind of clarity. Like a fog had lifted. Later that evening, I got an email. Not from my brother, from his attorney. A settlement proposal. My brother would plead guilty to a lesser charge of document fraud, misdemeanor level, if the DA agreed. In exchange, he would relinquish his half of the firm to me entirely. He wanted a clean break. No civil suit. No further legal action. I forwarded it to my attorney. She called me within the hour. "This is actually significant," she said. "He's offering you full ownership of the firm to make this go away." "What about the employees?" I asked. "The clients? The people who've been in limbo for 2 months? That would be settled under your ownership," she said. "You could stabilize the firm." I thought about my father's handshake. His word being his bond. "Tell them I'll agree," I said, "on one condition." He writes a formal letter on record, acknowledging that the will he presented was fraudulent and that my father's actual intentions were represented by the legitimate document. I want it filed with the court, not a backroom agreement. On record. My attorney paused. "His team won't love that. Then we go to trial," I said. They agreed to the condition 3 days later. The letter was filed. My brother pleaded guilty to misdemeanor document fraud, paid a substantial fine, and surrendered all interest in the firm. His name was removed from the company registration. The felony charge was dropped in exchange for the plea. My mother received a formal caution for her role but was not charged, partly due to her cooperation once she retained her own attorney and partly because the record showed she'd been manipulated as much as deceived. The day the probate court certified everything and the firm was formally transferred into my name, I drove to my father's office alone. Parked out front. Sat there for a few minutes looking at the building. It was a modest 2-story brick building with a small sign by the door. My father's name was still on it. I wasn't planning to change that. I went inside. The employees who remained were quiet, watching me. I stood in the middle of the main floor and I said simply, "I know the last 2 months have been uncertain. I'm sorry for that. My father built this place on honesty and I intend to run it the same way. Anyone who wants to stay, you have a job. Anyone who's already moved on, I understand completely. But the firm is stable. And it's going to stay that way." Nobody left that day. That night, Maya made dinner and we ate at our kitchen table with our daughter in the bouncer between us. She was starting to grab at things now, reaching out with her tiny fingers toward whatever was near. I watched her for a while. "It's done?" Maya asked. "It's done," I said. She nodded. Quiet for a moment. Then, "Your dad would have hated all of it." "Yeah," I said. "He would have hated that it was necessary. But I think he'd understand why." Maya reached across the table and put her hand over mine. "You protected what he built. That's what he asked you to do, even if he never said it out loud." I thought about him at the end. The way he'd looked at me and at Maya and at our daughter with this specific kind of peace, like something had been resolved that he'd been carrying for a long time. I used to think it was just a dying man finding his way to acceptance. But now I wondered if he'd known, even then. If he'd seen what my brother was becoming and had simply hoped he was wrong. He wasn't wrong. But neither was he helpless, because he'd already done the one thing that mattered. He'd written it down, clearly, with a woman who'd kept his records for 2 decades, and he'd signed it properly and dated it and made sure there were witnesses who were not members of his family. He'd trusted the system. And the system, slow and imperfect as it was, had held. My brother moved out of state a few months later. We haven't spoken since the day the letter was filed. I don't expect we will. My mother calls occasionally. Our relationship is quiet and careful, the way it probably should have been for years. She came to visit once in the spring, sat in our living room holding my daughter for a long time without saying much, and when she left she hugged me at the door and said, "I'm sorry I chose wrong." I didn't say it was fine because it wasn't entirely. But I said I knew she hadn't done it with malice. She nodded and left. I don't know if that's forgiveness or just accuracy. Maybe it doesn't matter. What I know is this, the firm is healthy. The employees have settled back into their work. 2 of the 3 clients who'd paused their contracts came back within a month of the transfer. The 3rd reached out recently saying they'd heard good things and wanted to reconnect. Maya went back to full-time work when our daughter was 8 months old. She negotiated a hybrid schedule so she could be home 3 afternoons a week. On those afternoons, I close my office door by 4 and we all have dinner together before our daughter's bedtime. It's a small life in a lot of ways. But it's ours. Some nights I still think about the way my brother sat in my father's chair, that envelope ready, the pen already uncapped. How certain he must have felt. How clearly he had decided that the world was made of winners and people who didn't move fast enough. He wasn't entirely wrong about the world. He was just wrong about me. I was never going to sign that paper. Not because I knew exactly what I was going to do next, I didn't, not yet. But because I knew my father. I knew what his word meant. And I knew that somewhere in a filing cabinet in a 2-story brick building in this city, the truth was already written down, waiting for someone to look for it. All I had to do was not let them bury it. My father's name is still on the sign outside the firm. I pass it every morning. And every morning, I think about a man who believed a handshake meant something. I'm trying to keep that belief alive in the only way I know how, by showing up, by being honest, by building something that will still be standing when my daughter is old enough to decide what she wants to do with it. Whatever she chooses, she'll know where it came from. She'll know it was clean. That's the only legacy I was ever trying to protect.